Did y'all think that was interesting that Fred happened upon that letter? You know? And can you just see God and his angels kind of ribbing each other? Aren't you glad we threw that in his face? You know? Well, I had that happen to me this week. I did not really intend to do a Memorial Day sermon. And then I had a Fred moment. God threw something in my face, which we'll get to in a little bit. Have your Bibles open to 1 Samuel 14. It's page 284. And if you think, wait a minute, we're backing up because we were a couple of chapters over last week. You're right. So don't let that bother you. But I served for 2 years as minister of a church down here by Salina, Ohio. And in the little town we were in, anybody ever hear of Montezuma? Dan has. You can't get lost there. You stop at the traffic light in the middle, you can see the town limits in all 4 directions. But I also served in the church there. We had a community food bank in our church building. And boy, you learn some things when you run a food bank. You do. You learn that there are some people that hit a bump in the road. They just kind of need a hand up. Not even necessarily a hand out. They just need a hand up. Then you see that there are some people who abuse the system. You see others that, bless their hearts, they try. They really do. And they just can't seem to click. So you just keep working with them and just love them and keep trying. Well, one man abused the system. And he would come in at least once a month wanting help. And he always said the same thing. He said, I just need to catch a break. And so I was sharing this because, I mean, as small as our town was, there was only 3 churches. So I was sharing this with the minister of the Methodist church. And he said, well, is that so-and-so? And I said, yeah, that is. He said, I went to school with him. Let me know the next time he comes in. It was only a block, you know. So I called him, and he came in, and he looked the guy in the eye and says, you don't need to catch a break. You need to get a job. Looked him right in the eye and said, and he knew him. You know, he knew him quite well. Well, he quit coming in. He'd pull up out front and send his wife in. That's what he did. Yeah. What about those people who want to catch a break? By the way, a couple of people were doing some things. We're in 1 Samuel 14, page 284. We'll be there in a minute. What about that? Well, you know, there are a lot of people who just, they get a break. All they got to do is grab it. Grab that job, grab that opportunity, and run with it. It may not be what you want. You know, my wife got her a wonderful degree, went 5 years of college to get it. It was difficult at that school, and never used it really as directly applying, but she's been thankful for the opportunities in her life. Sometimes those are the opportunities you have to grab, isn't it? In 1 Samuel chapter 17, I know that's a few pages down there, but we read where David takes food to his brothers who were in Saul's army. While he's there, he hears and sees the giant Goliath taunting the army of Israel. You know the story. I hope you read that often. And he's taunting God's army, the one that God fights for. David gets angry. If you read that, look at it, he knows that Israel is God's people. When they are insulted, God is insulted. He gets angry at his brothers and at the army of Israel. They have years and years and years of proof that God can beat any army and he can do it easily. The only thing that the people need to do is trust and pray. So why are these so-called soldiers hiding out in their tents? You've read this. Remember when David went to talk to Saul about Where was Saul? Hiding in his tent. You know, I hope you read this often, because what was going on here? Saul and the army were not remembering that God fights for his people. They weren't remembering that. The difference was David remembered. He remembered who and what God is. Saul and his army forgot. So David took another step and he built upon his prior successes. Now let's pause for a minute. Are a lot of people who call themselves Christians in a lot of trouble today because they don't build upon past successes? Yes or no? Everybody sitting here has had a past success with God. You know, I'm going to pick on Lord. Didn't plan on doing this. What is she building a success on? God gave her a wonderful husband. That's it. Well, God, you gave him to me. You can take care of him. I just condensed your prayers a whole lot, didn't I? And all of you are smiling because you're doing the same thing. Right? You don't know how God's going to figure out this latest mess that you're dealing with, but you're building on past successes. You might think, I'll just use what Tina gave us this morning. A sick child, drastically sick, that we're praying for. Maybe it's an extremely difficult situation, which we're going to go up and hug Kim because she's going through one. Maybe God has provided a job when you were at your lowest point financially. But we don't really, after a while, we're not too surprised because we know who we serve. Amen? We do. And when others don't, if you have hair, you pull it out. But it breaks your heart, doesn't it? It breaks your heart when people don't remember who and what God is. Imagine what it does to him. I'm right here. Hello. That's what he's telling us so many times, isn't he? Well, Saul caught a break. David showed up. And David took advantage of the fact that God always shows up when we just trust and pray. What would Saul do with this break that David and God gave him? Well, keep reading. I'm not going to spoil it for you if you haven't read it lately, because you learn some things. You learn what happens when what a bad person does when he sees God's hand at work. And it's usually not good. You see basic weaknesses that we human beings have and how they show up. And we also see how God can deal with both. But what if the good breaks just keep coming? Now, for Saul, by the time David showed up, Saul had been blessed abundantly. He really had. He should never have been king. He was of the wrong tribe and everything else. We talked about this. But God made him king. Not only that, he gave him a mentor. He gave him Samuel. Wow, what a great guy Samuel was. He was the ultimate ace up the sleeve, And then keep reading and read about the great kids that Saul had. Samuel's kids were no good. They were almost as bad as Eli's kids. Saul had great kids, better than himself. And probably they were from more than one wife, because Michal, his daughter, she became David's first wife, so she would have been 20 years younger than probably her oldest brother, Jonathan. And ladies, if you want to study a great lady in the Bible, study Michal. I've only heard one preacher in my lifetime ever give credit to this lady. But boy, she is a marvel, a fantastic, spectacular woman. And most preachers miss that. Jonathan was his oldest child, and Jonathan was a fantastic man of faith. Again, probably about 20 years older than David. He knew that David was going to be king instead of him, the oldest child, the oldest son. Wow, what would he do with that? He prayed for David. He protected David. He mentored David. And David was taking the job that should have been his. But he was a great man of faith. How did he know that David was going to take his place? Because he was a great man of faith. You got your Bibles open for Samuel 14? We're getting there. But remember something as you read through this. Saul was king of Israel for 40 years. 40 years. We talked about one of our presidents that had 2 terms, and Roosevelt. How many Roosevelt have? 3 and a little bit of another one, right? And he was still way short of 40 years that Saul had. And what do we know about Saul's 40-year reign? Not much. But all we remember really that's really big about it is he spent all that time chasing David and trying to kill him. Okay? Well, we're going to read the story from that 40-year reign right now. 1 Samuel chapter 14. And we're going to start with verse 1. Now it happened one day that Jonathan, the son of Saul, said to the young man who bore his armor, "Come, let us go over to the Philistines' garrison that is on the other side." But he did not tell his father. And Saul was sitting in the outskirts of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree, which is in Migron. The people who were with him were about 600 men. Ahijah, the son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the Lord's priest in Shiloh, was wearing an ephod. But the people did not know that Jonathan had gone. By the way, the ephod was kind of a plate vest thing that you wore on your chest and back. And it had the names of the tribe of Israel right over the priest's heart. So he prayed for the people that way every day, and it was also a way that God used to connect with him. Verse 6. Then Jonathan said to the young man who bore his armor, "Come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that God will work for us, for nothing restrains the Lord from saving by many or by few." So his armor-bearer said to him, "Do all that is in your heart. Go then, here I am with you, according to your heart." Then Jonathan said, "Very well, let us cross over to these men, and we will show ourselves to them. If they say thus to us, 'Wait until we come to you,' then we will stand still in our place and not go up to them. But if they say thus, 'Come up to us,' then we will go up. For the Lord has delivered them into our hand, and this will be a sign to us." So both of them showed themselves to the garrison of the Philistines. And the Philistines said, "Look, the Hebrews are coming out of the holes that they have hidden." Then the men of the garrison called to Jonathan and his armor-bearer and said, "Come up to us, and we will show you something." Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "Come up after me, for the Lord has delivered them into the hand of Israel." And Jonathan climbed up on his hands and knees with his armor-bearer with him, and they fell before Jonathan. And as he came after him, his armor-bearer killed them. The first slaughter which Jonathan and his armor-bearer made was about 20 men within about half an acre of land. That's a picture for you, isn't it? They come up on their hands and knees, they walk toward these guys, the guys start falling over in front of Jonathan, and the armor-bearer comes along with the little sword he had and killed them. That's what happened. Now, why? Why do we have this story in the Bible? I like that question. Okay? Why did God put it in here? You know, He actually tells us. These scriptures are in your bulletin. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 11. "Now these things happened unto them for examples, and they were written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come." Romans 15, verse 4. "For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope." First reason, they are here for examples. Okay? They're written to admonish us. Hey, wake up, read, see who God is. They're to admonish us. They're also to indicate to us we have duties and obligations. They're given to warn us in a gentle and earnest manner. See, God does this. Have you ever heard that phrase? Let me see if this is new to you. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of That's God's goal. God wants to fill us with joy, and then happiness is a wonderful byproduct. They are to give earnest and friendly advice and encouragement, and also to admonish us to be careful. And then in 1 Corinthians 10:11, we are told that these are things for us to learn from. So we'll have patience and have comfort. And when we read this true story from the life of Jonathan, the oldest son of Saul, we keep these things in mind. God wrote these so that all of this will be for our good. Now let's go to this situation that Jonathan was living in. Things weren't going well for Saul's army. In the entire army, there were 2 swords. 2. That's it. The king had one, and his general, Jonathan, his son, had the other. Now, the Philistines let them have these swords. I don't think they were extremely dangerous weapons. I mean, if they were lucky, they were probably the size of a machete. But I don't see these beautiful, long, dangerous swords. I don't see that. You can picture it yourself. But they were the only ones that had weapons. With that in mind, Jonathan and his armor bearer went out for a morning walk, and his faith kicked in. What does that kind of faith look like? This is Memorial Day weekend, right? And as I was getting ready to write this sermon, I came upon this true story of George Washington and his men. Now, somebody asked me this morning as I gave a little bit about this, was it before Valley Forge or after? I don't know. I honestly don't. You may know when you hear the story. But he and his men faced certain defeat. At the very least, they would be captured, but it would be very likely that they would be all slaughtered. The English army had them vastly outnumbered and cornered. Then this happened. Shortly after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and the people who were gathered there praying and asking for God's protection and blessing upon it, the new nation, this happened. They were fighting on Long Island, and British General Howe, H-O-W-E, had 32,000 men, 32,000 soldiers. And they had inflicted heavy losses on Washington's army. But they hadn't captured them yet or destroyed them. He was preparing to attack the 8,000 of General Washington's army. You get that? We were outnumbered 4-1. The American troops were on Brooklyn Heights. The British Army had George Washington's forces surrounded in a semicircle. The back of Washington's army was to the East River. For 2 days, Howe didn't attack. And historians have searched and searched and searched and never found any reason, not a memo, not a letter, nothing, to tell them why he didn't attack. Because when he attacked, Washington was done. It was going to be easy peasy. 32,000 against 8,000. But a couple of things had happened. The East River was behind Washington and his men. It was a mile across the river. All that the British had to do was sail their ships down behind Washington's army, and they had them sandwiched. The ships could bombard, the army could, and so forth. But the weather had conspired against them. The river was choppy, and a very bad wind had been blowing, and the ships couldn't come down the river. So that had not happened. Washington thought of his possibilities. They didn't look good. They couldn't attack. The only thing they could do was escape, and the only means they had to escape was the river. It didn't look good. The river was choppy, and so on and so forth. So sailboats wouldn't work. The wind was contrary. He got every rowboat and so forth that he could get, and they decided they were going to retreat across the river. Well, they set about to do that at 8 o'clock at night. And all of a sudden, this was on August 29, 1776, and all of a sudden, as they prepared to go, the wind died down, river became so calm they could actually overload the boats without any fear that the water would slop in. Wow, that was something. So they started retreating across the river. And then a gentle breeze started, which helped them. It helped them get across the river. And they continued. The retreat continued all night, but as they got to the time of the sun coming up, they weren't all across. And the guys who were still over on the Long Island realized they weren't going to get out when that sun came up. And they were worried. And a guy by the name of Major Benjamin Talmadge, who was still on the island, said, as dawn approached, and those of us who remained in the trenches looked, we realized we were lost. You know, as soon as this was discovered, we were lost because they would sweep in and wipe out those of us who remained. But then he said an amazing thing happened. He said a fog arose from the river and from the land, and it said so much, he said, I couldn't see a man who was 6 yards from me. So they continued the retreat. And he said, as the sun came up and it would warm up, that would burn off the fog. It didn't. The fog hung on and hung on and hung on until finally all of the troops were across the river. And there was more. Right by where they started their retreat, there was a family that lived right there who were sympathetic to the British. They liked the British. When they saw what Washington and his men were doing, they took one of their servants and sent him to tell the British. He managed to evade the guards of the Americans, got over to the British, and who did he run into? Hessian soldiers, Germans. They didn't speak English. He tried to tell them what was going on. They thought he was one of the Americans. They locked him up. They tied him to a tree. It'd be several hours before they could take him to General Howe. When they finally did, he spilled the beans. They rushed to the shore, and the only boats that were close enough for them to reach were some guys, some vagabonds who come in to loot what was left of the army as it retreated. And as one historian, General Green, said, the best effective retreat I ever read of and heard of. Why? This is the words of that general. Surely the explanation is only this, that God was defending the cause of liberty. How did such an event happen to George Washington and his army? How was it even possible? I think that's funny because the English general's name was Howe. Yeah, I think it happened because General George Washington prayed to the same God that Jonathan, the son of Saul, didn't he? Now, let's go back to what happened with Jonathan and his dad. There, when the army was over here shaking in their sandals and Jonathan and his armor bearer went out. What was going on? You read it. Read it this afternoon. The king, King Saul, was nuts. He was crazy. Read the rest of the chapter. Read the rest of that chapter 14. Saul behaved bad under pressure. Even when things were going his way, he did stupid things. That's just who he was. You give him a break, he'd break it. That's what he was like. God had already decided by this point that he was going to replace Saul as king. We read that story last week. Those events were right around the corner. The nation of Israel, they were in a losing mood. You know, they didn't have any weapons. You read it. Read chapter 13 there. If they wanted a hoe or a rake sharpened, they had to go to the Philistines and ask and pay them to do it. At this point in time, the culture in Israel made our culture right now in the United States of America look absolutely rosy. You know? Could God do anything? Would God do anything? I picture this as like a raging stream. We've seen some of those around here lately with all this rain, haven't we? Jonathan waded out to a rock in the middle of that stream and stood on it. Standing there with chaos swirling all around him, he stated this truth. If the Lord will work for us, and nothing restrains the Lord, then he can save by many or by few. You know, we know this story. We've read it. What happened when 12 guys, 13 when you include the Apostle Paul, took that same truth? History says it, and the Bible records it. This is what was said about those 13 men. They turned their world upside down. Last Sunday afternoon, the baccalaureate service for the 2017 class of North Baltimore High School took place over here at the Methodist Church. As I understand, there was 45 to 50 kids in the class graduating. 12 or 13 showed up at the baccalaureate service last week. And we talked about that. I talked about it with Mike here at the bridge as two preachers. And because we wanted to talk about what happened the day before, and this was Monday. And we quickly got off subject. Can you imagine that with preachers? Because, you know, we got to talking about some other things. Our churches are growing. The Bridge Fellowship is growing. We're growing here. People are hungry for Bible study. You guys went out and said to people, what would you do if we had church on Wednesday nights? I'd be there. People want to know the Word of God. Right? We're busy every day telling people about heaven and how to get there. These are exciting times here at the North Baltimore Church of Christ. Amen? And why? Because we've got a new president? Because peace has broken out in the Middle East? Because Kim Jong-un over there in North Korea has suddenly become a nice guy? No. These are exciting times because we know what Jonathan knew. We know what George Washington knew. As long as we are people of faith, God can do great things. And he doesn't have to have a whole lot of people to do it. Does he? He doesn't. All we have to do is trust and pray. What do we pray? I didn't do this. Jamie did. She picked this up. I think it's fabulous. Number 525 in our hymn book. I'm going to combine something that Barb did this morning. I want you to stay seated for verses 1 through 3, and we'll all stand and we'll sing verse 4 as we stand. So let's start with verse 1. We'll do all four standing on the floor. For years I thought there was just two, but people only sing one, the first one. But once I got to looking, I really like the last verse. I like it so much that I put it in here in your bulletin. If you want to look at it, I'll read it out loud. It's right there under the part about the sermon. Oh, thus be it ever, when free men shall stand between their loved home and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must, when our cause it is just, and this be our motto, in God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave, for the land of free and the home of the brave. How many of you have ever heard that one before? Pretty rare. Great one. I don't think we'll hear any of the Hollywood people singing that one at events. So remember that. Let's pray. Dear Father in heaven, thank you for giving us this land. Thank you that still today we can worship freely. May you bless our country, bless our leaders, our senators, our congressmen, our president, and so forth. And bless them beyond themselves. Give them wisdom in the decisions they make, even when that may not be the one that they want to make. But overrule them because you have that power. We thank you for being the same God who worked for Jonathan, who worked for George Washington, and who works and watches over us. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen. Our closing chorus.